You are watching QTV, and here is the news. The headlines. 11 civil society organizations have demanded for action from President Edgar Lungu against individuals cited in the Financial Intelligence Center report. Justice Minister Given Lubinda says his ministry is in the process of formulating a law criminalizing torture. A 31-year-old woman of Kawamba district has been gang-raped on her way home from a drinking spree. And now the details. 11 civil society organizations, CSOs, have demanded for action from President Edgar Lungu against individuals cited in the report, such as the recent Financial Intelligence Center report and the Auditor General's report. The CSOs say the latest Financial Trends report for 2017 makes sad reading, as it clearly shows how weak the internal controls systems have become in the country in ensuring accountability. Reading a statement on behalf of the 11 CSOs, Oxfam Country Director Darius Judge said it is very disheartening that out of the 426 cases that were disseminated to the law enforcement agencies arising from the Auditor General's report, only one conviction has been secured. Ms. Judge says with an estimated 4.5 billion kwacha loss in 2017, the CSOs are deeply saddened that 3.9 billion kwacha is actually estimated to have come from tax evasion-related cases. She says the CSOs note that President Lungu is on record demanding that if he is availed with evidence on corruption, for him to accordingly deal with corrupt individuals, saying the report of the FIC is the evidence he was looking for and should now take action. Ms. Judge says as a matter of urgency, the CSOs are demanding that President Lungu gives the nation a roadmap on how the looting of public funds will be put to an end, as this evil act has negatively impacted Zambia's development.
We are also appealing to relevant government departments to ensure that systems relating to the recovery of stolen state assets deposited in foreign jurisdictions are actually taken care of. Zambia can learn from the case of Nigeria, which has been implementing very vigorous recovery of stolen state assets program. However, we must emphasize that if that was to happen in Zambia, it will require adequate support from the Republican president, as is observed in the case of Nigeria, where there is actually that political will and leadership. Civil society members will soon share the version of the published cases in the 2017 report, where we will fill in additional information in the blanks so that the public can actually know the football club, for example, that we spoke to, how that was bought with illegal money. The Zambian people are tired, and I'm sure you'll agree with me that you too are tired of having to note that a few untrustworthy public servants and political figures masquerading as those representing the public interest are actually in reality the ones pursuing personal benefits.
Speaking at the same event, NGOCC chairperson Sarah Longwe says it is unfortunate that some stakeholders have risen against Financial Intelligence Center Director General Mary Chuma for doing a brave and bold thing. Ms. Longwe says that the attack on Ms. Chuma is an attack on the women folk in Zambia.
As my colleague Mr. Nyenda has said, they should deal with the issues that she has done, not on her personal aspect, but as part of her duty, as her mandate, that they are supposed to let us as citizens be told what is happening, how our money or money which has been gotten in our name is being spent. That is within the Act. So what we must do is ensure that we read the Act and also tell the people who are harassing her that they are the ones who are in the wrong, not her. And we may see that it's just a young woman being targeted. She went out of her way. But next time they will target many other people. So she is being attacked. That means we are all being attacked.
The 11 civil society organizations are Transparency International Zambia, TIZ, Alliance for Community Action, Action Aid Zambia, Zambia Council for Social Development, Civil Society for Poverty Reduction, Center for Trade Policy and Development, CTPD, Oxfam Zambia, NGOCC, Consumer Unit Trust, Society Cuts, International Zambia, Operation Young Vote, and Caritas Zambia. Civil rights activist Brenda Changala says the ruling Patriotic Front will be starting a war it cannot win if it makes the mistake of having Financial Intelligence Center FIC Director General Mary Schumer removed from her position. Mr. Changala has cautioned the ruling party to also realize that threatening a public officer is in fact a crime in itself. He states that by calling for Ms. Schumer's dismissal, the PF is distracting her from doing her job for which she was employed. Mr. Changala tells QTV News that the ruling party should therefore leave Ms. Schumer to do her job. He states that the release of the FIC Trends report to the public, upon which the ruling party is basing its call for the dismissal of Ms. Schumer and the disbandment of the FIC board, is now water under the bridge. Mr. Changala says what Zambians are now waiting for is the arrest and prosecution of all those cited in the FIC report.
If they make a mistake of firing Schumer, they will have started a war which they will not stand. Because I must also warn them that threatening a public officer is a crime in itself. Those people are doing their job and they're obstructing their functionality. Antonio Mwanza has just left an opposition party called FDD, where he was a champion against corruption. Now he has gone deep. He's drowning in corruption. I don't know whether he has breathing space. How is PF raising money to pay him, the Secretary General, Sunday Chand, and the others who are full-time? Because not too long ago, PF didn't have this money. PF didn't live this lavishly. It tells you something is wrong somewhere. And if they were intelligent enough as they claim to be, let them stay away from some of these things. It has been exposed that they are stealing. And it's water under the bridge. What we wait for is now is massive arrests. We know institutions have been destroyed. And this is the last institution they wanted to destroy. It will not be allowed. If they
Justice Minister Given Lubinda says his ministry is in the process of formulating a law criminalizing torture in line with the Republican Constitution. Mr. Lubinda says his ministry is also reviewing the Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code. Speaking when he officiated at the Human Rights Commission Universal Periodic Review Information Dissemination workshop, Mr. Lubinda assured the nation that government means every word in accepting the 183 recommendations proposed at the third Human Rights in Universal Periodic Review, UPR. He says by accepting the 183 of the 202 recommendations that were made, government has demonstrated its commitment and willingness to promote human rights in Zambia. Mr. Lubinda has further disclosed that his ministry is working on the Public Order Act as well as reviewing the Prisons Act to transform it into a correctional act.
The government is encouraged by the collaborative efforts among the Human Rights Commission, civil society organizations, and the government through my ministry. Before, during, and after Zambia's third cycle of the UPR, I will let out a secret from the bag for those who were not in Geneva. We spent many hours in the night, government officials and representatives of civil society organizations, particularly the Human Rights Commission, to go through the report that the minister was to present.
Speaking earlier, Human Rights Commission Deputy Chairperson Kondwa Chivia said the Commission is committed to working with government to ensure the Universal Periodic Review is implemented. Ms. Chivia says the Commission is also optimistic that government will open up and facilitate the possibility of expanding and reforming the Bill of Rights.
Notwithstanding the impressive acceptance rate of the UPR recommendations, the Human Rights Commission will continue engaging various stakeholders, including the government, to ensure that consensus is reached towards abolishing the death penalty. The Commission wishes to commend the government for accepting a moratorium on the death penalty, as recently announced after the dialogue meeting with some cooperating partners. It is also Also encouraging that since 1997, there's been no president who has signed a death warrant in Zambia, and therefore no execution has taken place since then. Therefore, Zambia is a de facto death penalty abolitionist. However, it is the view of the Commission that this is not adequate. The government is still expected to abolish the death penalty, both by law and practice, by ratifying the second optional protocol to the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, which abolishes the death penalty.
A 31-year-old woman of Kawamba district in Luapula province has been gang-raped by two men on her way home from a drinking spree. Police Assistant Public Relations Officer Godfrey Chilabi says one suspect identified as William Chilambwe has so far been arrested and will be charged for the offense of rape. Mr. Chilabi says brief facts of the report are that two men emerged from hiding, grabbed the woman, beat her and later took turns in raping her. He says this happened in Mutofwe village in Chief Mukanta's area in Kawamba district. Mr. Chilabi narrates that the victim managed to bite one suspect on his lower lip and the tongue as he kissed her during the act. He says the suspect is nursing deep and severe human bite wounds on his tongue and lacerated lips. Energy Minister Matthew Nkua says Zambia has continued lagging behind in achieving its long-term and medium-term national electrification targets set at 91% for urban areas and 51% for rural electrification by 2030. Mr. Nkua says Zambia's national electrification rate currently stands at 31.4%, that is 67% access in urban areas, with 4.4% access for grid connections and 7.5% for standalone systems in rural areas. He says the wide electricity gap in Zambia is an abnormality considering that the country is blessed with abundant diverse energy resources, including hydro, solar, wind, biomass and geothermal, among many others. Mr. Nkua says with 60% of the country's energy resources remaining untapped, Zambia needs to include widespread access to affordable and reliable electricity in order to facilitate economic growth and technological innovation, as well as economic inclusion to alleviate poverty. The minister was speaking when he officiated at the Zambia Off-Grid Investor Forum in Lusaka, organized by the Alliance for Rural Electrification in partnership with the Rural Electrification Authority, REA, among others. CTE Matthew Nkua, speaking at the same forum, European Union Head of Delegation to Zambia and COMESA, Alessandro Mariani, has reaffirmed the EU's commitment to work with the Zambia's government towards attaining a sustainable, financially viable energy sector, which is critical for the achievement of Zambia's development goals. Mr. Mariani says the Zambia-EU partnership for energizing Zambia will bring the private sector on board through a combination of traditional and innovative financial instruments for both on-grid and off-grid investments.
As you may be aware, lack of electricity is a factor hindering Zambia's growth and development. The social and economic costs of inadequate access to electricity are immense. According to the Central Statistics Office Living Conditions Monitoring Survey report of 2015, Zambia national electrification rate stands at 1.4%. That is 67.7% access in urban areas, with 4.4% access in rural areas. For off-grid, we got 7.5% standalone systems in rural areas. Given these statistics, the country is lagging behind in achieving its long-term and medium-term national electrification targets set at 91% for urban areas and 51% for rural electrification by year 2030. The wide electricity gap in Zambia is an anomaly because the country is blessed with abundant, diverse energy resources, including hydro, solar, wind, geothermal, biomass.
One thing we should be busy in this country about power generation, access, but there is a terrific number of opportunities in terms of energy efficiency, and we do have a duty to share with our colleagues and friends all the state-of-the-art possibilities to save energy and not only be preoccupied with the production. In addition to this, there is a clear emphasis on the sector which comes from the European Investment Bank. As you know, the European Investment Bank, contrary to the European Union itself, that concentrate on grants only, provide concessional loans, high concessional loans, and in the case of Zambia, these have been invested more than 70 million euro for the construction in a consortium, clearly, of the Itechi hydropower plant and for the rehabilitation of the Kafu and Livingston transmission line. This is to give you a snapshot of the level of intervention and the level of partnership between Zambia and the European Union in the energy sector.
First Lady Esther Lungu has noted the need for increased sensitization and awareness aimed at eradicating stigma and misconceptions connected to the condition of Down syndrome in Africa. Speaking when she officiated at the Regional Alliance for Rights Africa towards Disability Inclusion Capacity Building Workshop in Lusaka, Mrs. Lungu noted the need for early child education, health and other interventions to be put in place to educate the public on Down syndrome. The First Lady notes that there is currently marginalization of intellectual and psychosocial disabilities and that those affected have seen the worst stigmatization. Negligence, self-denial, silent suffering, and even death. Details in this report.
Many people with Down syndrome in Africa face low expectancy, abuse, stigma, segregation, and limited life opportunities, both as children and adults. Society's negative attitudes prevent them from reaching their potential, living valued lives, and contributing to society. Down syndrome causes varying degrees of intellectual, physical disability, and associated medical issues. The current situation for people with Down syndrome in Zambia and Africa as a whole is still bad, as they are still being hidden in homes, not able to access quality health care and education, and socializing is still a problem. This is all due to lack of sensitization and dissemination of information regarding the condition. It is against this background that the Alliance for Rights Africa Disability Inclusion, ARADI, held a capacity building workshop in Lusaka, Zambia, with the aim of training Down syndrome advocates from 11 African countries who engaged various African governments to ratify the Africa Disability Protocol that will change the language Africa uses in regards to disability. The training workshop was officiated by Zambia's First Lady, Mrs. Esther Lungu.
I know that we still have a lot to do, especially with regards to Down syndrome. We therefore need more sensitization and awareness, such as early child education, health interventions, and other interventions in order to eradicate the stigma and the misconceptions. May I assure you that as we meet here today under Alliance for Rights Africa Towards Disability Inclusion, ARADI, the key objectives of this gathering will fall on the fertile soil provided by our government, and be rest assured once more that Zambia will rise above self and for the good and benefit of all persons with disabilities. I therefore look forward to government, through His Excellency, the President, Mr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, to ratify the Africa Disability Protocol.
Rose Modi is Africa Down Syndrome Network chairperson, and she called for concerted efforts from leaders, including First Ladies in Africa, to address the challenges that people living with Down syndrome face.
What I'm saying is that we need people like Her Excellency to be on our side for us to do the work that we have to do. We are all Africans. We have a lot of things in common in our beliefs, in our culture, in our way of life. But the one thing that had been lacking for quite a long time had been the unity of coming together to address issues properly. We've been in silos, doing our own things in our own little ways. As the media usually says, whatever you do that is not seen, it's like, or known by others, it's like blinking in the dark.
The Zambia Agency for Persons with Disabilities was also represented at the event.
Let's make sure that whatever we do is for the benefit of persons with disabilities. We have a lot of organizations that come or discuss disability issues. We speak a lot of good English, but at the end of the day, nothing is happening. Persons with disabilities continue wallowing in poverty. Persons with disabilities continue not getting their rights. So let's make sure that whatever we do, we have an interest for persons with disabilities.
People with Down syndrome require support in some areas because, like everyone, they have the potential and the right to live valued lives and contribute to society. Nakaonga reporting for QTV News in Lusaka.
Wow, interesting report there, Nakaonga. Government has been advised against delaying in announcing the maize floor price, considering the anticipated low yield. BioZ founder Evans Ngoma says any delay by government to enter the maize market might affect the buying of maize for strategic reserves. Mr. Ngoma says the poor rainfall experienced during the 2017-2018 farming season, coupled with the outbreak of the 4 army worms, means the country will record a low maize yield. He has told QFM News that the low yield means that the available maize will be up for grabs on the market. He adds that this is especially that neighboring countries like Malawi and Congo DR are seemingly in dire need of maize. Mr. Ngoma says government should therefore come up with an attractive price. Meanwhile, UPND chairperson for Rural Construction and Development, Mono Mapani, has questioned government silence on the maize floor price for this marketing season. Mr. Mapani says farmers, especially in rural areas, are panicking and have begun selling their produce cheaply to briefcase buyers because the government has not yet announced the maize floor price. He says farmers have no other option but to sell their crops cheaply to available briefcase buyers.
Our neighboring Malawians and Congolese are seemingly in dire need of the commodity, such that before we know it, the commodity will have crossed the frontiers, leaving government struggling to meet its traditional 500,000 metric tons of maize reserve should they delay to announce a better buying price than the one they floated in the previous marketing season. In some part of Eastern Province, businessmen buy maize at 1 kwacha per kilogram with the hope of reselling it at a higher price. It will be of essence if farmers can be protected so that they can get the benefit of farming.
The agriculture sector, to date, and we are in June, half a year, we have not started distributing the inputs, and we are remaining with 2 months into the rain season. No inputs yet. The roads are not worked on, the roads are impassable. And we are waiting for the rain season so that we cannot deliver. The e-voucher system is too pathetic. There's nothing to point at. The farmers, they don't even know how much they'll sell their maize at. All these things are supposed to be looked at by perfect governors who are supposed to take the interests of the people at heart. But in Zambia, it's the opposite. Please, our appeal, let's do the correct thing. And in a democratic dispensation, it's not wrong to step down. And it has never been a criminal offense when you wish to step down. If you have seen that the duties that are aligned with your position are becoming impossible, please let's show way and do the correct thing by stepping down and allow those who can work for the people to deliver.
President Edgar Lungu has accorded a state funeral to late Minister of Gender Victoria Kalima, who died on Monday, June 11th. In a statement, Deputy Secretary to the Cabinet, Patrick Kangwa, says a 3-day national mourning has since been declared in honor of Ms. Kalima. Mr. Kangwa says the period of national mourning will run from Thursday, 14th June to Saturday, 16th June 2018. He says during this period, all flags will fly at half-mast and all radio and television stations will play solemn music from 06 hours to 18 hours every day. Mr. Kangwa adds that all activities of entertainment nature should either be postponed or cancelled. He further states that funeral for Ms. Kalima, who died at Mainasoko Military Hospital after an illness, is being held at house number 13, Kasempa Road off Chipushi Road, Sunningdale, Lusaka. And Vice President Inongewina has described Ms. Kalima as a courageous and determined woman who did not hesitate to speak her mind on any issue that touched the lives of rural Zambians. Writing in the book of condolences when she visited the funeral house, Ms. Wina says Ms. Kalima impacted positively on the lives of rural women as an agro dealer. She says Ms. Kalima will be greatly missed as a charismatic parliamentarian and a woman leader. Meanwhile, the Basic Education Teacher Union of Zambia, BETUS, and the National Union of Public and Private Educators of Zambia have described late Gender Minister Victoria Kalima's demise as a blow to the fight for gender equality in the country. BETUS Women Coordinator Angela Chisanga says the union will remember the late Ms. Kalima as someone who largely advocated for the end of gender-based violence in the country. Meanwhile, NAPE's National Secretary Nelson Mwale says Ms. Kalima played a major role in championing women in empowerment programs, which is among of the many of the union's mandate.
It is a black day for Zambia. As a union, we remember Comrade Kalima as somebody who inspired us, because as a union, we've been so much into issues of women empowerment. We've been so much into advocacy to do with the 40% representation in parliament. And so we've worked very, very well with the Honorable, and so we are saying to His Excellency the President, Mr. Edgar Chagwalungu, and indeed the family of the late, that they accept our condolences as a union, and that, as a union, we will continue remembering Honorable Kalima as a gallant, woman who fought for the rights of the women, who fought, for the stance of the women in the political scenario of this country. In view of this, I say, may her soul rest in peace.
The consumer unit Trust Society Cats International Zambia has expressed disappointment over government's decision to revert to the controversial Farmer Input Support Program, FISP. Cats International Coordinator, Cats Center Coordinator Shanai Makumba says there were many benefits that came with the electronic voucher system. Ms. Makumba explains that under the e-voucher, government cut down on costs such as system reduced on middlemen. She says it is therefore disappointing that the Ministry of Agriculture has decided to revert back to the conventional FISP instead of addressing the constraints that were identified in the e-voucher. Women for Change WFC has appealed to political parties taking part in the forthcoming mayoral and other by-elections in the country to conduct campaigns devoid of political violence. WFC Executive Director Lumba Sianga tells QTV News that violence keeps women away from political activities. Ms. Sianga says what happened in the recent Chilanga parliamentary by-election, where some cadres were hacking each other, should be avoided in the forthcoming by-elections. She says women tend to stay away from political activities characterized by violence, hence the need to ensure that campaigns are conducted in a peaceful manner. Ms. Sianga states that in order to motivate more women to engage in political activities, there is urgent need to end the voice.
Which is not good at all, because it also deters women to go and vote. Like you saw, Chilanga had a very poor turnout. People were definitely discouraged by the violence, because of course you can't go and risk your life. So in the end, the political parties are the ones who lose out when it comes to voters, and also having women to stand as candidates. So we would like to urge the political parties that will be participating in the mayoral elections, that is for Lusaka and Chilanga, to desist from violence, and also to commit themselves not to have their cadres being engaged in violence, because this is not good for our country, it's not good for the women.
Transport and Communications Minister Brian Mushimba has reaffirmed Zambia's vision to become a land-linked country. Speaking at the ongoing United Nations meeting in Mongolia, Mr. Mushimba says, being centrally and strategically located in South Central Africa, Zambia is positioning itself to be a transport, logistics and communications hub. He says the country has realized that being landlocked, after all, can be used to the country's advantage in the quest to transforming into being a land-linked with all 8 neighboring countries. Mr. Mushimba adds that Zambia is in the process of acceding to the multilateral agreement establishing the International Think Tank for the Landlocked Developing Countries, LLDCS. He has attributed the delay to the amendment of the Constitution, which has brought in changes with regard to the procedure for the ratification or accession to multilateral agreements. He notes that the establishment of the International Think Tank for LLDCS is a major achievement, as it brings into being the first over intergovernmental body specifically dedicated to the cause of countries. Mr. Mushimba says the International Think Tank is therefore poised to offer informed solutions and aid in the implementation of the Vienna Programme of Action and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Movement for National Transformation MNT President Daniel Shimunza has vehemently objected to any public-private partnership that exploit, vandalize and exclude Zambians but favor foreign monopoly transactional capital deals. Mr. Shimunza says this is evidenced in the recent sale of public assets such as markets, bus stops, police stations and road projects. He states that sadly the Patriotic Front government has not taken stock to interrogate the privatization process under the Chiluba administration that benefited a few individuals at the expense of the nation. Mr. Shimunza says public-private partnerships that exploit and exclude capital access, investments and empowerment of citizens is a wrong path for the nation.
In the event that we should learn from lessons of the 1991 and post-period of 1991 privatization process, when we look at the historicity of that process, privatization only benefited a few people who are rich today and who are promising to save Zambia because of the money that is stored from the privatization process. This is not the way to go. We moved in the Kaunda era of 27 years, we moved completely into nationalization, and in 1991, going forward, we moved up to where we are to privatization in the era of the MMD. Now, as a mature democracy, we must find our balance between privatization and nationalization. And that's the reason why, as Movement for National Transformation, we are advancing an idea for limited nationalization policy from 2021 and beyond that is going to see the economy of Zambia be shifted from foreigners into Zambian hands. And that can be done systematically and institutional frameworks, as well as economic empowerment measures put in place to incentivize the Zambian people.
That item brings us to the end of our news, but before we go completely, here is a recap of stories making headlines. 11 civil society organizations have demanded for action from President Edgar Lungu against individuals cited in the Financial Intelligence Center report. Justice Minister Given Lubinda says his ministry is in the process of formulating a law criminalizing torture. A 31-year-old woman of Kawamba district has been gang raped on her way home from a drinking spree. That's the news. Bye-bye. God bless.